right, so let's talk about I guess we'll start with like up skills. Like so when you're first leveling, and then we'll talk about PvE, and then we'll get into PvP, okay? When you're first leveling, you only have access to a few skills, and as you level and get higher level, you upgrade, you unlock more skills. So obviously your first skills are going to be quickfire and predatory strike. Honestly, I think quickfire is a lot better than predatory strike, but when you have nothing, it's better than nothing, right? Predatory strike doesn't really get really good until you get it to epic and you have a good dagger. Before you have a good dagger and before you have it at epic, it's not really that great. Quickfire is really strong. I feel like the lower level crossbows are better than the lower level daggers. So if you had to choose between the two, I would choose quickfire. On top of that, you can do it from range, which means you don't have to spend as much time getting to the target. And so when you're PvEing and you're kiting around because you don't have a lot of damage or you don't have a lot of tankiness stuff, being able to kite around is a little bit better. Let's talk about some more stuff. Nimble Leap. The reason why Nimble Leap you should take early on and at least get it to rare is because if we look over here, you have this really important skill called Nature's Power, which is a passive for your crossbow. Increases your damage and skill damage boost after using a mobility skill, which means you can use this as well as your dodge roll to get it up. Now, your dodge roll, in my opinion, I think this version is the best in PvE. You upgrade it to rare, so it costs only 25 stamina when you use it, which means you can use it more often, and it means you can keep your Nature's Power up more often. Now, there's some scenarios where the ambusher stance would be a little bit better just because of the dagger you're using. My dagger, whenever, let me show you. So with my dagger that I have, whenever I use a mobility skill, it has to be a dagger mobility skill. Any other mobility skill won't work. It has to be a dagger one. Whenever I use my dagger roll, for example, I'll get 50 increased base damage. Base damage is this damage here. All right, so Mortal Mark, Poison, and once you get it, Thorn Gale, and Selfish Infiltration. These are 100% skills you're going to want to get to at least rare, and then eventually get to epic. If you are playing actively within the first couple days, you should have all your skills that you need to epic. So it's not, I don't know, like I think some people put like this really heavy emphasis on which skills to upgrade first, but to be honest, if you're actively playing, you're gonna get all your skills to rare within the first day very quickly. And then if you're actively playing in an active guild, within the first day, you'll probably get a lot of them to epic, and within the second day, you'll have all your skills to epic that you need. So I don't know. I think like trying to like tell somebody, hey, do this skill first, it's kind of like, I don't know. In my opinion, it's not as important as just saying, hey, these are the skills you want to get to epic. But if you really want to put emphasis on it, you want to get quickfire up first because that's going to do more damage every time you poison somebody. And you're going to want to get poison to rare at least as well, because then you can stack up to 20 stacks of poison onto somebody. You're going to want to get Mortal Mark to rare because then it works like as a Z ult, where after like 3 seconds, the total damage you did to that person, a percentage of that will explode for even more damage on them. So it's very good for single target damage. I would say those would be the main ones you want to get to rare. Selfish Infiltration starts at rare. When you start working on epic skills, it's a really, really good one for DPS to get to epic because it'll increase your offhand weapon attack chance, which Crossbow Dagger, offhand weapon attack chance. When we talk about offhand weapon attacks, basically what that means is every time you attack or use a skill, it uses, I'm just going to say your right hand, the weapon in your right hand. Now, for Crossbow and Dagger, because you have two, you're dual wielding, there's a chance every time you do an attack, whether it's an auto attack or a skill, there's a chance to do the same attack or skill with your left hand weapon as well. That's what they call offhand weapon attack. And so each weapon itself has its own percentage chance to proc. But then you can also get additional chance from different things like selfish infiltration and passives and things of that nature. So if you look with my dagger or my crossbow, I have a 37% chance. And then when I use my dagger, I have a 31.8% chance on that dagger or on that crossbow. You can use selfless infiltration to increase it by 120%. So when I use it, right? Oh, there we go. When I use it, this dagger now is 67% and this weapon is 79%. So you can see why it's important to get this to epic, because it just increases your damage overall in PvE. PvP, there's some scenarios where you save it for defensively. I'll talk about that in the PvP area. But yeah, this is kind of like your main damage area here. You want to get all these to rare, and then start to work towards epic. Thorngale already starts at epic, so you don't have to worry about that. Quickfire, you want to get to epic because every time you land a critical hit, regardless of what weapon you're using, it'll lower the cooldown on this by 10%, so it gets you to keep it up almost indefinitely when you can combine it with some other skills and passes. All right, we talk Nimble Leap. Just getting it to rare would just lowers the cooldown, which means you can help keep it up more often, help you move around more often, and also help your nature's power to keep up as often as you can. Mortal Mark, I already talked about why you want to get that to rare. This starts at rare. Eventually, when you start working towards epic skills, you want to use this. You want to get this to epic as soon as you can. Thorngale starts at epic. Now we talk about dagger skills really quick, and then we'll go into passives. Predatory Strike is not good until you get to epic. In my personal opinion, early on when the game first starts and you guys are like kind of like leveling in the first couple days, in my opinion, until you get a good dagger, Predatory Strike just isn't all that good. If you have an extra if you have an extra skill slot, sure, use it by all means, right? But once you hit 50 and you have all these skills, you're gonna kind of have to decide what skills you want to put on your hotbar and what skills you don't. And in my opinion, I don't think Predatory Strike is worth it until you get a good dagger and you get it to epic. There's some other options there. For me, for example, I used rapid fire early on, or recoil fire, sorry. The reason why I used recoil fire is because I can get more damage off from range, which means I don't have to hard commit in PvP. PvE, it means I can tag mobs from further away for events. Sadly, the way this game works is you want to be able to tag as many mobs as you can, even if you just do 10% damage to it. Being able to tag it means you have a chance to get the drop, and you're competing against longbow usage, which have more range. You're competing against staff usage, which have more range. So being able to tag is really nice. And like I said, you replace it with Predatory Strike as you get stronger, as you get better weapons, and etc. But I don't know. To me, it felt like recoil fire was better early on, and then later on you replace it with Predatory Strike. Brutal Incision. I didn't talk about this yet. Brutal Incision, incredibly important. It starts at rare. You want to try to get it to epic as soon as you can because it just increases the damage by a lot. Crossbow Dagger scales off a crit. My base damage goes from 48 to 266. What that means is every time I do anything that deals damage, it rolls between 48 to 266. There's other like things that take like into the damage equation, but at the base level, it's rolling between 48 to 266. Critical hit will actually force a max roll for your damage. So instead of 48 to 266, if you land a crit, it's 266. You should be landing crit on this almost all the time. If the person's 50% or less health, gives you an extra 600 crit hit chance. So like realistically, should be playing around crit, get this epic, makes it more damage. All right. These are kind of your bread and butter. You'll probably see these skills, maybe not Nimble Leap always, but aside from Nimble Leap, you'll see all of these skills in your PvE and PvP combo. Now, to go forward, later on, once you get Knife Thrown to epic, PvP wise, in terms of like bossing, you don't really need it in like mobs you kill in like 3 to 4 seconds. You kind of still can, but in terms of like bossing, you're definitely going to want to get Knife Throwing to maximum because you can basically instantly stack 20 stacks with just Knife Throwing with your buffs. So if you proc Poison, Thorngale, and Selfless Infiltration, and you use Epic Knife Throwing, right? What that will do is Knife Throwing does 5 daggers, but because of Selfless Infiltration, as long as it procs and it does offhand weapon attack, it throws 10 daggers. Now you're throwing 10 daggers. They're counted as projectiles. So Thorngale, currently at the time of making this video, counts for the knife throws. So of those 10 daggers, now you're doing an extra projectile attack per dagger thrown. So now you're at 20 attacks just from using like these buffs and knife throwing. Now poison, each individual attack can proc poison. So now of those 20 attacks, assuming you land them all, you have 20, you have max stacks of poison instantly. So in the beginning, the moment you start to attack a mob, you have 20 stacks of poison on, which is incredibly important. And then as you level up, you're gonna have Fatal Stigma and Shadow Strike. Shadow Strike, like as soon as you do that, you can go into like Shadow Strike, Fatal Stigma, Mortal Mark, and do your damage. You can use Quickfire and then go into Shadow Strike. It's up to you. But then basically from there, your damage is going to be like, you know, you get your Fatal Stigma. You want to do Fatal Stigma before you do Mortal Mark. The reason why is so that Fatal Stigma can proc while the target is marked. So it increases your damage on Mortal Mark without even really needing to do extra skills, right? And then after you do Mortal Mark, you want to do your big damaging skills, which are going to be Quickfire, Predatory Strike, and Brutal Incision. You're going to have 3 seconds. So the higher attack speed, the better. This is kind of where like you can kind of replace some stuff. In PvE, you're gonna need this mana regen skill. But this is kind of where you can put Blackwind Spirit here for extra, just a little extra damage. It's against a poison target, so you're gonna do extra damage. And in bossing, it's a single target, so you're gonna get even more damage off, etc. But this is kind of gonna be your bread and butter for PvE. Defensive skill, you have 2. Sustaining roll for more damage focused. Ambusher stance in PvE, this is going to be more for the mana regen when you are fighting things that have a lot of fury attack, like open world dungeon mobs, or bosses, things like that. The ambusher stance, when you block or when you dodge a fury attack, puts you into stealth, but it also increases your mana regen, which can be a decent amount, especially if you get an epic, just because but I think sustaining roll is actually really good too, because it means you can use it more often. And if you doing it in open world dungeon mobs, and think of it like a Vayne E, when you like attack them and does like the knockback. If you dodge a fury attack, right, it'll like do a counter attack and it'll knock them back. If they hit a wall, they get stunned. It doesn't work on bosses, obviously, because bosses can't get CC'd, but against mobs, you can stun them, or you can just make them die to fall damage. But either way, it can be really good. So passives. Passive. We talked about Nature's Power and why it's so important. You're always going to have this. Now, as you level in the early levels, I mean, always actually, you're going to want in PvE, Assassin Step. Basically, when you get you're going to want to get this to at least rare. The reason why is because when you kill a mob, and it increase your mana regen for like 6 seconds after killing a mob. And there's no cooldown to this, so every time you kill a mob, you can keep it up. So that means if you're doing 3 to 4 seconds per mob, you constantly have this up. PvP is a different story, but I go over passive skills in PvP at a different time. Ambidexterity is really good because Crossbow and Dagger specifically kind of rely on offhand weapon attack chance. Being able to land your offhand weapons basically almost double your damage, and in some cases increases it by even higher because, you know, getting like poison stacks off, etc. So being able to being able just to increase your offhand weapon damage and offhand weapon crits is really, really good. So I would say definitely want to take it. Again, PvE specifically focused. If you don't have to worry about any defensive whatsoever, say you're with a healer or you're in a dungeon, you have a healer, etc., or you're just killing mobs that you don't have to worry about like getting hurt. Piercing Strike for damage bonus. Again, in your opening, just this skill alone does 20 attacks, right? So 20 attacks is 20 just by this, not including any extra stuff. That's 20 times 9, 180 extra damage, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but it because you have such low cooldowns, it doesn't seem like you have low cooldowns, but I promise you do. You get it off quite often, and you're getting a lot of just extra damage off, right, for free. If we continue, right, the only other skill that you should consider is getting this to once you are working towards skills to get to epic. Getting this to epic is really, really strong, because pretty much you have poison up 100% of the time against bosses in PvE, just because of the way that this interacts with poison, and as well as like getting this to epic and getting your dagger passive up. You can pretty much always have poison up on somebody, and you're always proccing poison. I have a 1 minute clear time against the Temple of Slaughter boss, and that temple is the most annoying dungeon boss to kill because you have to do these mechanics where you grapple and stuff. My group, we kill so fast we don't have to do any mechanics, we just focus on the boss. 1 minute Normally that boss takes like, I don't know, anywhere between 10, like I think the fastest, like in terms of like killing, like, oh, normally it takes like a couple minutes, 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, maybe longer for some people. We kill it in 1 minute. I'll have a video up. It'll probably be a YouTube short. But I'll have a video up showing us killing the boss. So if you can just hard focus on DPS, you should use this skill. It'll just lower your cooldowns constantly. Yeah. Okay, so to keep going on to dagger skills, dagger passives. So crit damage. Again, I talked about this earlier. Dagger relies on crit. So getting crit damage to increase your damage overall is very, very high. Assassin's Instinct, it just increases your critical hit regardless of anything else. You want to use this skill. If you feel like you need the extra crit chance, you can upgrade it to rare and epic, but honestly, you can leave it at base for a bit while you're focusing on other skills that you're upgrading, to be honest. But yeah, so those are going to be your three. Like PVE, if you're doing open world dungeon mobs, you want to use this skill. If you do and you want to get this to rare as soon as you can, especially because events. If you're doing bosses, you can replace this for a different. You maybe replace it with this because maybe the bosses have higher endurance to like lower your crit chance. But in open world PVE, you probably don't need this Vicious Fangs. So the only other one I would suggest in PVE would be Profuse Poison. Profuse Poison, you want to just leave it at rare. You don't need to upgrade it to epic right away. Basically, it just increases your duration of your poison on a mob. And during the day, it gives you like 11% poison damage. And then at nighttime, you get 43% poison damage. But the big thing is this, like combining like epic poison, or sorry, combining even just rare poison with profuse poison, rare and epic crucial chance is really strong. Once you get to this point where you have a like decent gear and you're getting everything else epic, once you have epic poison plus epic crucial chance and epic profuse poison, honestly the epic profuse poison doesn't matter. Giving it a rare is fine. But once you just get like inject venom and crucial chance epic, like you are flying through bosses, you're constantly having poison, which means you're constantly poisoning the mob every time you do an attack. You're doing 20, 30, like you're doing crazy amounts of attacks per second. So that's not even including any additional auto attacks. So you're constantly lowering the cooldowns. You almost indefinitely have quick fire up. So I'll play a video. This video here is me killing the boss in about, I believe, not including the time it takes to pop my buffs, pretty much me killing the boss in like, I want to say like 10 seconds or so, I believe. It's very fast. Yeah, I think by the time I finish explaining this, it's already going to be done. But yeah, so that's the combo.